surprise May AstroInklings webinar this morning with Tam. It's good to see you, Tam.
Are we under a Uranus influence because this is a surprise podcast?
Yes, we are. And in fact, it's so surprising that I don't have my coffee with me this morning. So grab your water
Yep, I have mine.
or your tea, I suppose, or your coffee if you happen to have it, and sit back while Tam and I break down the month of May for you. And
Yeah.
Tam, this morning I'm gonna kind of try this a little bit differently. So I took and you didn't know this, but yesterday behind the scenes, I took all of the things that were going on into May. And then I started breaking it down into themes. And I did this last month with April, and it seemed to work really well because believe it or not, there are themes that break down each week. We noticed it, I think, when we were writing the energy almanac, that there's certain like weeks or certain energies that appear in the week that are building up the whole month.
Mhm.
And so I'm calling it the arc of the month, right?
Oh,
So the arc that the information is taking us to.
sure.
And I'd always noticed this and played with it behind the scenes, but never really like brought it out and went, oh, hey, we should be talking about these things. So that's kind of how I want to start out this morning. And it'll take a little bit of time because May doesn't have lots of big, flashy
Right.
things
I
going
know.
on,
Yeah.
which is good for
Mhm.
us for once, right?
Yeah. Rest.
Seems like, yeah, we get to maybe kind of integrate a little bit. But, May is not a month that asks us to stop, doing things that we've been doing. It, in fact, is asking us to stop negotiating with ourselves and just start doing things for
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's, not in a harsh way either. It's not like get your butt in gear and do it. It's more like, stop, piddling around and really focus in a specific direction. And
Mm.
and this is a month where it is what we feel is true for us that must become what we live as true for us. Does that make sense?
Of course, it makes sense. I
I
I totally get it. And considering that we're sort of moving toward Taurus energy, the practical action, the purposeful growth, like right on target. Totally hear what you're saying.
exactly, time to build what all that Aries energy has been prompting us to
Right.
put out
Right.
there. So as we look at the month of May, I have it broken up into 5 weeks because the first week is really just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in our week-long thing. And that arc in or that week in this arc is really about the unfolding awareness that we have. We kind of feel it in our bodies, what it is that we're doing. In fact, your body knows. That's the one thing I
Always.
think people don't understand is your body knows.
Always.
And the truth that your body knows surfaces maybe quietly but unmistakably like this is too much, I can't keep this up, this isn't sustainable, or I need to move, I have to do something. When we get to week 2, that'll be the 4th through the 10th, the first full week in May. It's about responsibility because every aspect in that particular week is about not ignoring what it is that's been coming up for us. We're asked to take ownership of our direction and also your choices, like the choices that you're making, be responsible for them. When we get into the week 3 of May, we're looking at understanding and initiation, meaning the message is clear now and we begin to articulate it. Maybe we begin to really trust it and plant the new seeds. That's the week of the new moon as we get into the mid-month. The 4th week is the activation week. So
Mhm.
in our arc, we're activating the energy shifts, and we begin to move and express and embody the truth in real time, right? As far as the month's energies go. And then in week 5, we have the blue moon, right? A blue full moon that is where revelation becomes the end of the arc for the month of May, where the bigger picture comes into view, kind of like we've dialed it in, now we see it, and we see clearly what it is that the month's energy has been leading us to the whole time. So, it's kind of
Well,
a cool way to look at it.
that's a great arc that you just laid out. And I want to share with people who have the energy almanac. I just wrote all of her words right into the book. So now I can have it to remind myself overarching themes. That was a great arc that you explained.
Awesome. That's a great way to play with it too, because then every time you look at that first page in May, it's right there in your face.
Yep.
So May is not trying to push us forward quickly. I mean, we're not taking leaps without having some, real idea of where we're going. It's really kind of doing something more important for us all, and that is aligning ourselves with ourselves. How amazing is that?
Right?
Right? Because without that, any action that we take isn't rooted in anything grounded. It's kind of possibly rooted in old conditioning, in old outdated beliefs, and or misaligned expectations. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about expectations, and I realized that expectations really are the mind killer, right? Because you get this idea in your mind about what something should be, and then
Hmm.
when it isn't, like in my life, I blow it up, right?
That
But then
literally.
a lot of people do that though, because it is something that, we all experience. And, you know, um, so in May, as we, contemplate moving forward, feel it first. Feel it in your body. Feel, what it is that your direction is asking of you, and then understand it next. Right?
Mm,
Understand what is this about? How does this align me? And then move.
mm. It's that constant theme, like being mindful of the Aryan energy of impulsivity and reactionary ways. You really have to slow down and, like you said, feel it in your body. Like,
Feel it, then do it. Feel it, understand it, then do it.
feel,
And
understand you.
yeah, it's like this pathway that makes sense, especially given that, we still have a lot of Aries planets that are triggering, our
Absolutely.
impulsivity. So like you said there, impulsiveness is not going to play well. So it would be a better idea to ground it now that we have planets moving off into Taurus. And
Right.
then if we look at this from the astro design or from the human design astrology interface, we start the month of May and end April with the earth in the last gate of the spleen center, where we for the previous 6 weeks have been dealing with the fear, the potential fear expression of grounding something new. And that's how we start this month as well. We're ending that transit through the spleen. So we have this splenic awareness, which is intuitive, which is
Mm,
about presence in the now. And it's, survival, but I like to call it thriving or succeeding energy, because it's really positioning you intuitively with what is best for you, what
mm,
works for you. And then that leads us to emotional faith. And we'll get into why that happens to come up, and then mental clarity, and then ultimately embodied action. So even the human design of the month of May backs this up, right? We
yes.
begin with this instinct or
Mm,
this intuition, and
mm.
then we move through emotional trust, and then we gain the mental understanding, and then we end in aligned expression. That is this full circuit of transformation for each one of us this month. I love it.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Times two. Times two.
Times two or times it all. And yet there's this moment mid-month then, and I'll put up the calendar here in a minute, around the Mercury Cazimi, which is Mercury conjunct the sun. And that also happens around the new moon, like the day later, where everything shifts. So we have a very powerful pivot point in the month of May.
Mm,
And before that point, so these first couple of weeks, we're realizing. And then after that point, we are living it. So it's almost like this month has a turning point that's very obvious, or will be very obvious, I think. So you may experience the month of May personally with some sudden clarity. The aha, whoo, I could have had a V8, right? Something something that you've been avoiding. I had one of those this morning, right? You and I had that little conversation before we went live, and that was my like duh moment.
yeah.
And maybe it's a realization that changes how you see yourself or the situation that you're in, and it allows you to move in a new direction. But then also emotional waves, right? There is going to be a shift in the nodes for human
Mhm.
design this month. And that shift takes us into very emotional territory
Ooh.
and leads us into faith and trust and believing in ourselves and believing in a higher power or the goodness and the rightness of everything that is working in the universe. And then after that, a desire to simplify things, right?
Oh,
And
that's very
then that is very Taurian, and, as we get toward that end of the month, we actually shift the sun into Gemini, so it's
yes.
a good thing to have simplified before
Mhm.
the sun bams into Uranus in Gemini, right? And then that scattered potential comes up,
Oh,
right? So, we have to have moments, find the moments where we're ready to feel, to speak, or act consciously with awareness that we're doing things differently. So I think May, the invitation, it doesn't demand us to be perfect and be right on and to have all the pieces right this minute. It asks us for honesty, right?
mm,
Right from the start. Where are you out of alignment with yourself? And then what truth have you been aware of, but not really fully living yet?
oh boy, that one like nails. I was just talking about how much coaching I've been doing lately. That nails what a lot of people are feeling right now. Like there's this truth that they should be living, could be yeah, I just feel like, oh, maybe May is the month where it truly clicks in.
I think so, because then once you have that sort of awareness, then what would you change if you simply honored that truth?
Mhm.
And that would put you in a whole new maybe pathway to living the higher self for you. Um, so becoming honest about who you really are and about what you really love and about really what you want. And when you do that, your choices then begin to reflect that truth. And that's the important thing, right? The truth is about the choices that you make, and everything else then begins to align around us
Mm.
or with us, for us. We could talk about that in many different ways. Right? All right,
Hope
so let's go ahead.
no, I just said hopefully. All
Yeah.
right, let's look at the May calendar. Yahoo!
So here's our May calendar, and while it does look kind of busy, it's definitely not as busy as, say, April or some of our March, February, things have been. Instead of big things going on, there's more of the smaller, chinks of things that change,
I
which I
feel
love.
I feel like the moons were really interesting for May, but the rest of it was a little blasé, which is good. I'll take the blasé.
Yeah, I was kind of unpacking some of those moons because I looked at the moons and went, "Hmm, not much there," but there really is if you look. We're
You gotta look
having to
closely
look.
at
Yeah, you've gotta look in the small places like the semi-sextiles, which we hardly ever look at, or the
it.
inconjuncts that we look at when they really form yods, but
Right.
we'll break down these moons. I think let's start with the full moon of,
May
because
1st.
we open the month with that. Oops, I have the blue moon, that's not the one I want. I need the full moon. So, if we just look at this, I'll bring this calendar back up for people. I had a message that just fell. I have all these like wonderful like stickers, right, Tam, that I like to put on the calendar. And one fell out at me and it was stay positive.
Oh,
And I went, okay, we're
that's
going to
really
stay positive. May's theme is about being positive even in the face of these changes, even if it's scary, right? Even if the things that you're going to do scare you. And then shine, dream, smile, right? It's all good for the month of May. So, okay, let me change this now so we can look at the full moon. Remove May 1st, the full moon. Let's take a look at this mama.
look
Now,
at
I've
that.
outlined for people where the planets are, and some of those outlines are pictures of configurations that come up with this full moon. What's the first thought you had when you looked at this full moon?
Well, I like you said, I mean, I kind of had to look closely at it, but what I highlighted was the yod right away.
Yeah.
I just found that really, really interesting. Other other than that, like I didn't notice the mystic rectangle till I saw your chart. I saw that later. I was like, oh, yeah.
Yep, I didn't notice it either, because I mean, I'm not even sure, what I was thinking because really, it it should have been so obvious because the nodes are in an opposition and the sun and moon are in an opposition and they are sextiling one another, or the sun and the node and the moon. And I was like, oh my God, this is a mystic rectangle. And I'm not sure that people are fully aware of what the mystic triangle or rectangle is all about. So I thought, oh, it was a really good teaching moment, right? For us to take a look at some of this, new energy and or new something that might be new, right? The mystic rectangle. And the mystic rectangle is one of those things that I think is it's a pattern that I see with a lot of younger people coming onto the planet. And and that's because of the alignment of the planets and the way they've been showing up. But I feel like it's really giving us the foundation for grounding everything in the spiritual and in the earth, right? Both need grounding. So the divine and the physical human. And wonderfully enough, that this becomes something that we see in a full moon, which means that anything that's falling away, because the full moon is often a time of releasing or culmination or letting go, those would be the things that don't sustain us in the expression of our full wisdom, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this Taurus sun, Scorpio moon.
Mhm.
In Taurus, we have the energy of the body and the energy of stability and security. And we
Mhm.
have this moon in Scorpio, which is about releasing, letting go, letting the baggage fall
Or
away.
yeah.
Um, it's really kind of a liberating thing, but may not always feel like that for some people because the truth sometimes isn't comfortable. And
Mm,
if that truth is that you have to release something,
mm,
maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a thing, maybe it's an idea, maybe it's a belief, those things can sometimes be interpreted by us as not something that we really consciously want to let go of, but that if we did let go, we'd be in a better position. So the full moon actually, kind of is speaking to us through the physical body first
mm.
this time, and then the mind will catch up, right? And go, "Oh, yeah,
Always.
that's what this is about."
Mhm.
And then the full moon questions, if you wanna look at, well, what is it that is, really the question I should be talking to myself about is, can you trust what your body already knows?
Mm.
I was talking with a client, this was I guess it was last week. Goodness gracious, sometimes the days just flip by. And she was like, "How do I feel it in my body?"
Yeah, it's a
And I
big
went,
one for people.
yeah, and I thought, here's something very important to talk about because
Yeah.
we've gotten away from the body's wisdom because we've become so reliant on the mind. And
Oh,
the mind is what we want to tune into instead of the body.
100%. I talk with my clients about this a lot. Get used to feeling the answer in your body. If you're telling me you're stressed out, prove to me you're stressed out. Where do you feel it in your body? And they'll be like, "Oh, what do you mean it's in my body?" Like, pay attention. Where is your body holding tension? And they'll, oh my God, like, oh, I feel it in my hip. I'll never forget the client who said, I feel it in my pinky finger. Um, but your body has the wisdom. Your body is holding the energy somewhere. So, first of all, where is it in your body? And then, can I trust the wisdom my body is telling me? So, maybe a two-part question there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I believe that this is really all about, that wisdom in your body.
Mm,
For this time of the year anyway, as we are moving, through Taurian energy, it does reconnect us to our senses, and the senses live in the body,
mhm.
right? Even sight and smell and taste and feeling and all of that is really the tactileness of the physical body, right? So, in this case, right, under the full moon, you get this opportunity, a big opportunity right away in this month where the first week is about awareness, right? We said that arc in the beginning was all about awareness. And where is that awareness in your body, right?
Mm,
What is it? And, it's also interesting that in this full moon, there are minor connections astrologically that we don't normally think about or talk about, but they were close enough that I had to go, well, we got to factor these in. And one of them, if you look up at the top of this chart where the sun is located, I didn't call it the sun, but it's the circle with the little circle just about at high noon of this chart. It is sitting in what is called a semi-sextile to Venus in Gemini, and then as well sitting in a semi-sextile to Saturn on the right side of it, also in a semi-sextile. Now that's something you can't ignore.
Hmm.
I just can't ignore that because that is something that is unique. And then when you keep looking, you see, oh, well, Saturn is also in a semi-sextile to the North Node.
Mhm.
The North Node is in a semi-sextile to Pluto.
Wow.
And then, the moon, if we look at that, the moon is sextiling the South Node and Pluto. So there's a lot of connection that at first blush we didn't see. And while these seem like minor connections, there's like the preponderance of them. And
Right.
semi-sextiles are like the halfway point of a sextile, Tam. So if you have a 60-degree harmonizing aspect called a sextile, the semi-sextile is a 30-degree. What is the tension that takes me toward harmony, but I need to shift something in order to get to the full harmony? So it does feel sometimes like the semi-sextiles bring up, for example, Sun to Venus. Maybe it's about, well, what do I value? Do I even recognize what I value or my own value?
Mm.
Right? And if I'm going to want to harmonize the potential of the sun in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, by the way, right? What is it that I'm going to have to do? How do
Mm.
I improve my finances? How do I improve my self worth? How do I improve the value I place on myself? And how do I share my values?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And then if you look at the semi-sextile then to from the sun to Saturn, we
Yeah.
get a different set of questions, but now it's about the structure
Mm.
and the form. And what if I want to build according to my value, then what is it that I'm going to have to do? What
Mhm.
courage am I going to need to call forth in order to do that?
Right.
And then on and on. So there are all these real they're kind of under the surface, but they're there.
Wow.
And for most people, that can translate into tension or
Yeah.
anxiety or a
Well,
feeling of things just aren't quite right,
it's
right?
all
They're
these
not clicked
rumblings
in.
under the surface. So yeah, you get
Yeah.
anxious, wondering like what's happening here. There's tension. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. And then look at the North Node in this full moon is sitting at 6 degrees, I don't know, something like 50 something minutes, 53 minutes. And look at Pluto at 5 degrees, 30 minutes. They are so close to one another.
Sure.
And a semi-sextile.
Jeez.
So what is it that needs to transform Pluto in order for you to accommodate your destiny or the destiny that collectively we're being pushed to in Pisces, which is all about compassion and love and unconditional love and spirituality. What's holding you back,
Mhm.
right? And then always interesting to see Pluto and the moon in a relationship during a full moon or a new moon for that matter. And this one happens to be 30, 60, 90, a square. So we and the way, you would kind of look at that as the moon is all about your inner world, your emotions, your intuition, right? Timing. Timing is really an appropriate word to use with the moon because it's usually the one that the clock counting down because it's repeatable.
Mhm.
And Pluto squaring the moon means, well, what emotional shifts must you make?
Mm.
What and where's the moon? Scorpio. You know, Scorpio is full of passion and intensity about what it loves, about what's really true for it.
Mm.
But if there's a bunch of baggage in the way, it's like carrying 50 pounds up a steep incline.
Mhm.
It's hard.
And
And it
really, don't we think that we can tie this into the Taurus? You said love, and I went to the Taurus self love, which is
yes,
such an important issue right now. for people.
Self-love, self-worth, confidence in oneself, right?
Yes.
Basing everything on that deservingness that each one of us has to be able to live our lives purposefully in love and, uh, in what Aries has taught us was about sovereignty,
Mhm.
right? Being the agent of our own life.
Right.
So this full moon is a loaded one,
Yeah.
even though at first blush I looked and I went, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, me
Now,
too.
now look at the yod. The yod is that green highlighted configuration that I put there, and it's pointed at the moon. And anytime you have a yod, the apex point is going to be where all of the energy needs to drain through. So it's draining through the moon. The moon in Scorpio that we just said was about what emotional baggage are you carrying? What that needs to be released and let go of.
Mhm.
So this is a releasing, maybe more of a releasing moon than we've seen recently in recent past.
An intense releasing moon.
The potential is for it to be intense for sure,
Mhm.
depending on now in your own personal chart, look at where Scorpio is. So
Mhm.
where's that Scorpio moon gonna fall by house? In this chart, if it were a person, it's in the 4th house. So it's gonna be a lot of family and foundations and roots and possibly ancestral baggage that you're carrying that you wanna release. Right? Beliefs around who you thought you could be based on your culture or your society or
But be really clear, find Scorpio in your chart. It could be
Mhm.
relationships, it could be career, it could be for
Could be
me,
money, it could
the
be
12th
n
house I've got to deal with. Yay.
yay, 12th house, so it's the baggage that you're carrying within that is, maybe related to past lives, maybe related to early life conditioning, and by the way, this is the moon, and the moon does connect us back to our early life conditioning.
Yeah.
So, what is it that happened when you were 0 to 7 years old that
Right.
isn't really maybe in your conscious memory, but in your unconscious, you're acting as if
Mhm.
that happened. So that's a great coaching moment, I think, that, you could work with, someone to go back to that.
I'm looking at Christine who says natal 7th Scorpio moon, North Node, Neptune, Jupiter, and DC.
So
Yikes.
that's a lot of 7th house
A
energy
lot.
there, Christine.
Yeah.
So, that is addressing your relationships, your partnerships, and, in a way, the 7th house also relates to business partnerships, so it could be business or personal, but also enemies, right? The 7th house is like those people that aren't your friends or aren't there for your benefit. Um, so you might even have to look at, in some respects, like where are you being your own enemy, like self-sabotage, that kind of thing, even though that's more directly the 12th house. But in the 7th house, if the enemy is unseen, it might be coming from within. So,
Right.
all right. Anything else you wanna add about the full moon before we go on to the next thing?
That's plenty.
That's plenty, right? Um, I wanted to also point out that Venus in Gemini here is in a sextile to Saturn in Aries. You can see I wrote that up at the top there. Venus and the star, is about the sextile, and this is where truth meets responsibility during this full moon as well. It's activating, in an exact sextile that day. And things begin to click into place mentally and relationally when Venus and is in a sextile to Saturn. But remember that Saturn in Aries is really asking us to stand up for what it is that we really truly believe or want. And then not only to stand up to it, but then to commit to it, to
Mm,
use the discipline and responsibility to having chosen a direction or having chosen to do something, stick with that, right? Make it sustainable. Take responsibility for the choices you're making and moving forward. So that is something else that's going on within this full moon. All right.
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm asking this question, I'm not saying it. This mystical rectangle, in light
Mhm.
of the fact that we are releasing something, it could be intense and transformational. The rectangle is there to support us as we make that release. So we have like a built-in safety net almost.
Yes, but I wanna show you guys something else that I didn't mention this, but if you look at the mystic rectangle, built into it, just like in a kite, there are these oppositions, right? The north and the south node are opposing each other here, and so are the sun and the moon, and I didn't draw that in there, but the mystic rectangle stands on these opposing energies or
Mhm.
builds up around it. So it does still show us that something has to shift. We have to bring something into balance. So we have to, if the north and south node are in opposition, we have to, come to a balance point between our holding on to the past and our ability to move on to the future. Sun and moon, same thing, right? We have to balance the inner essence of ourselves with the moon and the outer essence of ourselves with the sun. So intrinsically in that dynamic is some tension, right? But it's beautifully put out there for us to we have all these like good things surrounding us, but maybe inwardly we still don't see ourselves as confident or worthy or lovable, that kind of thing. So there's still work to do within the mystic rectangle, but it is surrounding us with the potential for loving, unconditionality, spirituality, etc.
That is day 1 of May, and we have half an hour left.
Well, I almost think we could just kind of gloss over this. The next day, after the Scorpio full moon, Mercury moves into Taurus.
Yep.
So now conversations become more grounded because what we want is the practical, right? Don't give me all the fluff and stuff. We want what does this mean? We want to get to the nitty gritty. Um, Anything else you want to say about that one?
No.
Notice for all of you that are human design oriented, we are now done with the spleen, right? The earth is done until we get into September when the sun begins to move through the gates of the spleen. So fear is sort of, hopefully you've dealt with it. It's receding into the background as the sun and earth move on into other territory. And the new human design week on the 4th puts us in the most creative,
Whoa.
exciting configuration, right? With the sun in the gate 2, which says, I allow, and the earth in the gate 1 that says, I purposefully move forward. So that I was like, oh, that is a great way to start the week, right?
Mm.
And that is the gate combination that always follows the spleen activation, whether it's with the sun or not, because it would be flipped gate 1 and 2 if it was in September or fall. But in the spring, we go to allowing what is it that I'd been blocking all this time, and then purpose, finding that alignment with our purpose. And then I also noted that Saturn moves gates that very same day. He moves into the gate 21. You're going to love this. It's called the gate of self regulation. So now Saturn is saying, you hold the key. It's your actions that make that you're not the victim of circumstance out there, right? It's what you do to regulate your own actions that matters. And he'll be there for a bit. So that's a good one. Uh, of note, the second week, Pluto turns retrograde.
Right. That's a big one.
And, every year about this time right now, it's running this way. Pluto turns retrograde. And that means that transformation that we've been seeing in the outer world turns inward. So there's an inward empowerment time, an inward transformational time, an inward look at the evolution of your consciousness. And is it, where are you stuck and where might you need to do some more inner work to move? And he will be retrograde. I was going to look up those dates and I did not, but
October 16th. I just looked it up.
awesome. What is it? October what?
16.
So you have May, June, July, August, September, October, almost 5 months of Pluto in this realm of the inner world. But I also want to note for those of you that are with us today that also encompasses a part of Pluto's dip into out of bounds territory
Ah,
that begins in September, where there's a more rebellious streak, a more reform oriented streak that starts to come up. And what's transforming within you is really going to be about how you reform your life. So, transformation. And then we also have uh, transformation and reformation
hmm.
going up. Okay. Anything else you want to bring up for that week?
No, no.
Okay, I do want to bring up one more thing. So human design weeks run shorter than, say, the calendar week.
Right.
So if we have Monday, a new human design week, sure enough, we're going to have another human design week begin later in that week. And on the 9th, another one of the most stellar placements starts up. And this is one where it is about how you transmit to the world your personal genius.
Oh,
Now, everybody has genius, right? It doesn't, I'm not talking about genius that is your IQ, because that's not what's important. Your genius is what it is that you could do better than anybody else in your life, whatever that might be. And that week, beginning on the 9th of May and running through the 14th of May, is all about your genius, grounding in your genius, and then transmitting that to the world, your personal insights, your ahas that nobody else can have, right? That you're here to share those with others.
my business mind just turned on. This is a great week for those who need to get out there and share their brilliance with the world, right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what that genius is. Your genius might be something small and it could be something huge. There's no difference between it. The commonality for all people is that it's your job to share your genius with the world,
Love it.
right? Whatever that might be. And
Good.
it could be business, it could be something at home, it could be, how you can talk to people, many, many different things. All right. As we go to the third week, which is the 11th through the 17th,
Mm.
um, a couple of things stand out to me because that'll also be the week of the new moon. But before we get to that new moon, two big things happen. One, in human design, the nodes shift.
Mm.
So they've been, running through the same gates now for, oh gosh, I don't even remember. It was back maybe in January that they shifted. They've been running through the gate 37, the north node, which was the gate of family and community, and the gate 40, which was about taking appropriate time for yourself, for self reflection and for rest and renewal. Now they'll shift with the north node. Where are you going? Shifting into the sign or into the gate 55, which is what my dragonfly is all about. And this becomes the gate of faith, right?
Mm.
The gate of abundance through spirit, right? It is truly the most spiritual gate in all of human design. And it
Mm.
says that what we create in our lives, what we manifest in our lives, is in large part about emotional alignment with it or against it, right? Where, remember the movie The Secret back in 2005, and it was all about aligning your thoughts and so forth. Well, that was such a small part of what really goes on in our manifesting. Because if you don't align your feelings
Mm.
with what it is that you're trying to create,
Mhm.
then you are at cross purposes. So if you say, for example, I want to be a millionaire, but your emotions are all about, yeah, no, that ain't going to happen for me, right? Then you could think until you're blue in the face, but until you deal with the
Feel it,
emotional
right?
part of this, you're not going to get that. And that's what this gate 55 is all about. It really says that your supply comes from God, or
God is my source and my supply. I
there you
shall
go.
have
It
it. Yeah.
is very much like that. And then the south node, what do we have to let go of is so interesting too, because it's in the gate 59. The gate 59 is a gate that's really about how it's a very masculine energy, and it's the masculine energy of productivity. And in a way, what we have to let go of is just the doing, the things that aren't sustainable, where in a way, it's about letting go of greed, of striving, of pushing and forcing, because that is of the old, and what's new is more about the emotional alignment.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love it. And that, of course, will be activated for several months. And that same day, Mercury and the sun come into conjunction. So this signals the superior conjunction, where Mercury is on the far side of the sun. So we don't really see Mercury. And then um, it is the halfway point of the retrograde cycle. And it begins a process of our really identifying, kind of what it is. This would be the time, like a full moon, where what's culminating, right?
Mm,
What's coming together, as it relates to what was going on with the last Mercury conjunct the sun, which would have been while he was retrograde, right?
mm.
So that's the beginning of the cycle. Now we're coming to the midpoint of that cycle. So always, fun to see, like, well, what, like, aha moments am I going to have? And that is what, around June or May 14th.
Yeah, it's on the 14th, and then I would think that this would be sort of grounded, practical information, um, that we're looking at.
Yeah, I would guess so too, because you're talking Taurus energy.
Mm,
So
nice.
a grounded strategy,
Grounded strategy,
practical,
there we go. A
you
plan.
know, yeah, based in reality,
Yes.
um, not just taking, yes, have imagination, but what do I have to actually do to bring that imagination into real form? Which feels a little bit Saturnian, but I think, in the main, what we might be dealing with is where we are in comfort zones that we might need to push ourselves a little bit out of. Because Uranus is no longer in Taurus. We've had that whole experience of our comfort zone. And what are we ready to break free from? Right. And just be your full on self, build that, right? It's the builder sign. And then we have the new moon. So let's shift to the new moon chart.
Yeah.
The new moon. And again, this is going to be one of these moons where I looked at it initially and went, "Meh," but underneath it all was a whole bunch of fun stuff. And the first thing that jumped out at me was that the sun and moon and Mercury are very much still in a conjunction, right? The sun, and they're only what, three, they're not even, it's the new moon must be occurring before the Mercury conjunct um, the sun. And yet that conjunction is still holding. They're close enough in this
Yeah.
time.
Mm,
And that makes, this new moon one about communication and the mind.
mhm,
How does the mind interfere with the physical,
mm.
the
Mm,
practical?
I didn't think of that. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of pie in the sky thinking that could be, brought into some kind of balance during this period of time. And maybe even, I don't know, does it elevate our thinking in some way, right? Because we're in the dark, so we're planting seeds. The intention is there. And maybe the words come easier for the intention, the
Mm.
clarity around what it is that we're trying to create.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, the
Yeah.
clarity that comes in as we plant the seeds. Mm,
And one of the things that happened earlier in the week that I didn't mention was in human design, Jupiter moved into the gate 62, which is called the gate of preparation. So what are we preparing for? Well, Jupiter is growth and amplification. So what growth are we growing? What are we preparing for? Well, growth. Then
mm,
the new moon comes in and says, okay, plant the seeds, but be prepared to do the work to get them to grow, right? So, in a way, it becomes like a turning point in the mind, perhaps. Hmm, I like it. I like it. But also, we have Mars and
right.
Chiron in a conjunction. And we haven't seen that this year, right? We have not seen that this year. We haven't seen it in a couple of years. So Mars conjunct Chiron at the 28th degree. So we're at the end of the sign of Aries.
Right.
So are you moving out some wounds around courage and taking action
Mm,
that I think, mm, maybe it's been a long time in coming in someone's life. Now,
right,
it's not connected to, well, it is kind of connected to the moon, a semi-sextile once more,
right.
right? You see that? The sun
Yep.
and moon at 25 something and the Mars Chiron at 28 something. That's just 30 degrees from one another. So these semi-sextiles, they're holding on. They're telling us, that there's something coming of a harmonizing nature, but you might just have a couple of little steps that you got to do to throw something out,
I
weed
feel
something.
like maybe Mars conjunct Chiron, it's like that final push, almost internal push to like heal that wound. Do
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah, I think too, because the semi-sextile is subtle, th
Mhm.
that the Mars Chiron conjunction there and the semi-sextile to the sun and moon is about the adjustments in how you act and how you relate to one another, how you stand in your own power. Those might be the tweaks that we have to work with.
Yep.
But I also wanted you to guide, and I didn't highlight this, I don't know why I did not. There's a T square with Uranus at the apex, and let's see if I can find Uranus in this mess. It's right next to, I circled Mercury in the new moon. So if you're looking at the upper right corner, Uranus is the very next planet over. Well, it is coming into this T square with the nodes,
Mm.
right? It shows up more in the blue
Yeah.
moon,
Yep. Yep.
but it's coming. And that's tension that's pushing our evolution, our personal evolution, as well as our collective evolution. So, again, there's this sort of interesting play that's going on. And then Pluto's at 5 degrees. The north node's at 5 degrees. The
Mm,
south node's at 5 degrees. And while they're not in a configuration with one another, they the south node is in conjunct Pluto, which is difficult a time for adjusting and sacrificing something really indicates some big change. And then the north node and Pluto are in a, you got it, semi-sextile, right?
wow.
Again, some kind of adjustment. So there's something deep going on, I think, with this new moon that kind of belies the geometry, at least, of the moon and the sun itself. So something new. I think it's a course correction new moon.
Mm.
Right? How do we, move things out of our way and make space for what we want to fill in? So I think it asks us if the seeds that we're planting are aligned with our truth or past conditioning of what we think we should have or the things that we think we should do or should be.
So, course correction, can we talk about course correcting through Taurian lens? Is that really it?
Well, I think certainly we've got to think about it through the Taurian lens because we need the practical steps that we're going to take in order to make that change, right? So that's the sun and moon in Taurus right there, the opportunity to plant the seeds that matter and then to nurture those seeds,
Mm,
right? To nurture them. But Pluto's involvement here says that whatever it is you're planting and nurturing, it's not optional, right?
mm,
This is like the manifest destiny that each one of us has, the part that we're here to play in the grand overall scheme of the tapestry of people on earth, right? So I think it has um, a lot of bang with it because remember Pluto is at the, or not Pluto, Uranus is at the tip, the apex of the T square, and that says something must change. And then Pluto comes along and says, but the change isn't optional, it's happening. Get on board or don't.
I want to remind everybody to find Taurus in your chart. Which house is it for you?
And if this chart were a person, this would be in the eighth house, right? The eighth house is a house of death, rebirth, transformation, merging of energies, emotional intensity. So if this were a person, that new moon has a lot of potential for bringing up a lot of emotion, maybe emotion that's been encrusted that
Mm,
needs to be freed.
mm,
So and it also has financial implications, of course, as well. It might, if this were a person and you happen to have it in the eighth house, it might be a great time for a financial check-in,
Right.
check-up, make sure you're doing things, financially that are supportive, that are aligned with your values, that type of thing. So, so new moon, pretty powerful.
Mhm.
I think it's one of those turning point moments that, this month offers for us, right?
Perfect.
Anything else you want to share about the new moon?
Oh, I think you covered it all. I'm just looking at Christine here is saying first house Taurus, ascendant, and South Node. Oh, South Node. That's interesting too, since that's active.
So while you're planting new seeds, you also need to be thinking about, well, what am I releasing?
Right. Okay, fun.
What am I releasing? What no longer serves this incarnation, right? Because, that would put your north node, that would put her north node in Taurus or Scorpio. Was she talking about the Taurus or was she talking about
Taurus.
Scorpio?
She's talking about Taurus.
First
Yep.
house Taurus. So your, yeah, that's so fascinating
Right.
because while that full moon earlier in the month had you releasing things,
Yep.
now whatever is left there to block you from going on into being the full expression of who you want to be, this new moon offers that opportunity for you as well.
In the first house, which is really interesting. So within the personality, so to speak.
Yeah, within the
Really
things that you put out to the world, you
yeah.
know, what are you embodying now? I love it. Ooh, big changes there, maybe.
Big changes.
All right,
All
let's
right.
go back to our
We
calendar.
got Mercury moving into Gemini on the 17th. Oh boy, here we go with those scattered thoughts.
And immediately he conjuncts Uranus,
Yeah.
right? So he enters Gemini, he conjuncts Uranus. I think this is the awakening mind,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right?
Perfect.
Awakening something else in the mind. Just as the new seeds are planted for the new moon, Mercury moves into Gemini and immediately meets Uranus. So it's kind of electric.
Hmm.
I mean, this is awakening and it's sudden insight, the powerful aha moments, perhaps, the
Yeah.
breakthrough in your thinking or the breakdown even of old thought patterns so that the new can come in because new ideas come that shift everything potentially at that point in time. But
Well,
I
yeah.
also think that may already be happening for some people,
Oh, for sure.
right? Before Mercury gets there. Mercury's the ruler of Gemini, so it does take on extra power,
Mm.
from the 17th until Mercury moves out of Gemini. So this moment feels like I can see what's possible.
It's aha.
Yes. Yes. The mind wakes up and maybe it wakes up to a new frequency, right?
Mm.
It's raised its frequency, its tune. It's playing at a higher realm.
Mm.
Wow, that's really exciting. I like that.
It is, and it kind of is so interesting. It's the day after that new moon in Taurus, so maybe you like wake up the next day and Yahoo, here it is. Like it drops in, it just lands, right?
I think it lands, right? Because as we looked at, this whole of this week, it started with understanding and moved into articulation. How are we preparing and saying what it is that we're doing? We had trust, we have illumination, the aha moment. We have contribution, which I didn't mention because the sun that week is in the gate 8, which is about what is it you want to contribute to the world.
Mm.
And then the 14 where the earth is about bounteousness. I
Mm.
love that word. I just
I
love to
do
say
too. I
that
love
word,
that word.
right? And then the new beginning with the new moon, right? That week is kind of a big one, right? Okay. Now, let's go into the fourth week. Is there anything there we need to really talk about?
Oh my God, there's something almost every day.
Indeed. I think the big thing might be the sun moving into Gemini, also then right into the arms of Uranus.
Mm.
And, the shift is in motion.
Mm.
It's like the train, you can't stop. It
Right.
missed the station, it keeps going. And yet it's acceleration, but not necessarily chaotic acceleration. This isn't runaway train. This is purposeful. I need to pull in to the station. It says you can't stay where you were. You got to keep going.
Mm. You had
And
used the word activation, right, for this week,
yeah,
and so acceleration would go along with that as well, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, activation, acceleration, the truth you've uncovered from, the interactions with the planets in the previous weeks, the
Mm,
clarity you've gained now begins to move into action, and it
mm,
moves into expression, and it moves into lived experience. But first, you have to maybe pivot, right? You might have to choose how it is that you're going to release something from yourself, right? That's the liberation of Uranus,
yeah,
liberating the mind, awakening the mind. But for some people, that may also be a bit of an anxiety maker,
sure.
right? So keeping in your mind that you'll have to ground. That grounding is going to be also so important going into the future here. Okay. And we have 5 minutes. Shall we roll forward to the blue
You
moon?
absolutely 5 minutes to get on that final full, what do we call it? Blue honey.
Blue honeymoon. So let me add that here so we can take a look at this chart because it's also extraordinary. And I really um, want to remind everybody that last year, right around this time, we started having the conversation. You and me, Tam, we had this conversation around the architecture of the future,
Mhm,
which was the minor grand trine. That's what I've
mhm,
highlighted in blue here.
yep,
And now we have Uranus in Gemini. We have Pluto in still early degrees of Aquarius and Neptune in early degrees of Aries. That minor grand trine is activating, and you see it very powerfully reflected back to us in this honeymoon, blue moon. And I just want to remind everybody that this is, happening off and on and through 2028.
yeah,
So what we are seeing in the world as far as breakdown and breakups and breakouts and all of that are leading us to this new architecture. So
mm,
while it does kind of look crazy at times, the new architecture is being built, right, of what the future will be. And in this particular, I got to get the chart for this full moon because it's harder for me to see it on the screen than it is for me to see in person. Um, so that's part of it. But then the sun moon opposition are across Gemini at 9 degrees, almost 10 degrees. Like
mhm,
it's real close. So we'll just call it 10 degrees of Gemini. That puts it pretty darn close still to Uranus.
mm,
And, in a way, activates this whole pattern of maybe accelerated change. Right?
mm,
This is, I think, almost you could look at this full moon at the end of May as the opening to the summer's transits, right? We've got another eclipse series coming. We have in July this major sextile pattern that, we haven't even talked about yet. Configuration. Well, we did talk about it in the bigger scheme of the year ahead, but all of this, I think, is activating.
mm,
And a part of that activation experience is look at Chiron is at 29 degrees, right? The very last degree of Aries,
right.
because he actually moves into Taurus June
Yeah,
19th.
that's right.
And he'll be back to Aries because he'll retrograde backward to it. But I want everybody to take a look in their own charts. Where is Aries? You should be very familiar with where Aries is by now because the whole month of April was an Aries experience, pretty much, right? And where is it? Where's that 29th degree? Because this is where the wound of identity, of selfhood, of sovereignty really comes to a head or comes to a closure. You get to be you. And it's a healing moment because for a lot of people, especially if you've had your Chiron return, if you have in the last 6 years turned, 50 or 51, this has been something that's crystallized for you. For the rest of us that, maybe older or younger, it can be very important as well because the next place that he moves is into Taurus, where the wound becomes about scarcity and
Mhm,
prosperity and not having enough, not being enough, not worthy enough.
mhm,
So you want to have a solid sense of self that's been built through the previous transit of Taurus, or I mean of Aries with Chiron. And the full moon gives you that opportunity to really tap into it. It's the first time I've seen Chiron at 29 degrees. So it'll
Mm,
be, or what, where I've tuned into it. So I find that day to be really a hot day. So we have the minor grand trine that is building up the architecture of the future. We have the opposition in Gemini and Sagittarius, finding our true
mhm,
expression, our authentic selves, connecting to Uranus, which is all about, of course, the awakening mind. And we also have Chiron, the wound that is really kind of crystallizing the change that we need to be our full selves.
mm, mm. I think of Sag and I think about our personal philosophies, our personal beliefs, and I would be encouraging people to look at like what of my own personal philosophies are keeping me from maybe healing, maybe becoming everything that I want to be, especially with that Chiron being so active under this. That might be a really good one. What of my personal philosophies are keeping me stuck?
Yeah, because your personal philosophies and beliefs are all part of the mind,
Yes.
right? And you are, whether you're consciously or unconsciously, acting on behalf of those beliefs.
Hmm.
So it really does, call into question, well, what's the real truth here? And, all of this is also to say that, with Uranus in Gemini, we're already taking on a new look at what's going on with the mind, right? New awarenesses coming to us and an awakening and all the things that we've talked about over the past year of Uranus moving into the sign of Gemini here. So it's a big month.
It is well, as much as I thought, well, meh. Of course, it's nothing like what we just went through.
No, not at all.
So it is meh compared to that. But the moons are. I find the moons very interesting this month. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Because I think the moons here, they're the timing piece, right? That's the thing I think we don't often, I mean, I think we connect with it because we're looking at the moon, we see it moving through its phases, but in your own life, it's also the timekeeper of when it is appropriate to take action and when it's not, or what kind of action that is appropriate to take. So it has it has a very big importance, and I think in May we see that. Not to mention we have Beltane, right, the halfway point between spring and summer, which is always a big time. It is Wesak, right? The Buddhist tradition of the light, I believe. There's probably somebody else out there could talk to that. So May always happens to be kind of a month of excitement. Mother's
Mhm.
Day and all of that good stuff. School getting out in some districts. Yeah. All right. Well, we did get to almost everything for May. Any last words?
A little fire hose at the end of it to get all the astrology in. Do I have any last words? No. I think I just want to let people know if you love a simple version of astrology, Energy Almanac still will have 10 months of content available to you. This runs through March of 2027 with weekly astrology predictions and human design as well, written by Janet and I. And we love this book and want to make sure we get one in everybody's hands.
Indeed, then they're still available. So, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. And it looks like Tam and I will we're gonna have to play with the schedule a bit, Tam, but we'll
Ellie?
be with you either, well, now I can't see, it's either going to be the 27th or maybe we can wait until, we'll let you know.
Yeah, we're gonna have to choose carefully. You're right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care and bye for now. See you on Friday. Bye, Tam.
Bye.